Empowering people to take ownership of their wellness is our mission. We want to explore the intersection of faith, science, truth, and health right here on the Meehan Mission podcast. My special guest today is Mary Holland. She is the president and general counsel of Children's Health Defense. Mary has decades of experience in constitutional and international law. It was her own son's vaccine injury that gave this brilliant mama bear the attitude needed to legally challenge the medical industry. She has spoken before Congress, state legislators, and audiences all over the world about informed consent and medical policy. She is also the co author and editor of several phenomenal resource books: The HPV Vaccine on Trial, Vaccine Epidemic, and Turtles All the Way Down. I am honored to welcome Mary to the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Meehan Mission podcast. And today, my special guest is Mary Holland. And Mary, I am so thankful that you took the time to allow me to introduce you to my community if they didn't already know who you were. And I also just wanted to let you know that whew, you were one of Jim's heroes. He constantly talked about you and how brave you were, and that how, you would stand up for our children and just give everything. And I can't tell you how many times we were sending people the HPV vaccine book on, and we'll get into your books in a little bit, but I just appreciate you so much. And so thank you
Well,
for
thank you.
taking
And
time.
we miss Jim very much.
Yeah, he's a hard person to replace. And so
Not
he will
replace.
never be replaced, that's for
No.
sure. But we are going to make sure that his voice is heard and that
Yep.
we carry on that mission, and which is, why we created the Meehan Mission podcast, so that we can continue to bring on guests like you who are experts in their field. Because really, when it comes to awareness and education, the more that we know and the more that we can push out to our community, that's how we win this battle.
Yeah.
And, you've been in this fight for a really long time.
Yep.
And I'm so excited to see all of this, the legal part, which is really kind of, with you and with Aaron Siri, just
Yep.
kind of leading the pack, that's
Yep.
really making the difference. That's making the difference.
Yep.
But so I have a question for you.
Yep.
So, what in your lifetime, or was it in your childhood? Was it in middle school, college? What made Mary realize that she was built differently than everybody else and she had this fight in her?
Well, I suppose I've always been willing to stand up for things that I believe in. And, like most people, if I can go along with the crowd, I will, Kathy. If
Mhm.
things seem to be okay to me, I'm not gonna sort of really step out of line. But one of I've always been willing, where I really disagreed with people, to step out and say, no, I really disagree. And um, on this issue, there's just I when I do really strongly disagree, I feel it so deeply that even though I have lost people very close to me, I've lost jobs, all that kind of stuff, it doesn't really matter. I just,
Mm.
if I have a deep conviction that I'm doing, what the universe is telling me to do, I just have to accept that there's things that go along with that. And, I can be really sad about losing friendships, and there are many I'm really sad about, but it doesn't make me change my mind.
Oh, that's good. Well, it's that determination. Do you like wake up every morning and with a mission and you go out the door and do it? Is that your personality type? I would, you know, you get so much done. What
Not compared to how much there is to do, Kathy.
I know.
You
It's like a
know, I do
never-ending
the little
list.
bit I can. It's like, Bobby
Yeah.
Kennedy would say, I just can do it with my own little piece, I'm only in charge of my own little piece of real estate. I like getting things done, Kathy. I like
Mm,
getting things done. I am pretty mission driven. So, I am at CHD and Children's Health Defense, and we are doing a lot, as you point out. And so I do
mhm,
feel very mission driven to support the team and help get things done and be aware of what's going on and support what our mission is, which is to end the epidemic of chronic childhood disease in the United States, but globally, and to educate people, to put in place, to find sort of redress for those who've been injured, and to put in place safeguards so it doesn't happen again. And I do feel I have been in this for about 25 years, Kathy, and in that time I do feel like there's been tremendous progress. As much as we're not there yet, and we're not. We are now really getting into the courts in a way that was pretty unimaginable 20 years ago. The fight is on. I sometimes quote for people, it's attributed to Gandhi. It probably wasn't Gandhi, but they say first they ignore you, then they ridicule you, then they fight you, and then you win. And so we are very much in the fight stage now. They can't
mhm.
ignore us anymore. They don't even ridicule us so much anymore. They're fighting us. Pharma is fighting us every day. Big chem, big pharma, big media,
Mhm.
they are fighting us. They don't ignore us or trivialize us anymore. They know that people are sick of being made sick
Yes.
unnecessarily. People are sick
Mhm,
of sickness. That's
mhm.
the
Yeah, they're sick of being taken advantage of,
yep,
really, and,
exploited.
you know,
Absolutely.
it's
We've been exploited. Absolutely.
yeah, so I wanna go back, so you say you've been in this for, like, 20 years. What
25.
25, what was the, catalyst that put you in this fight? Was there a
Well,
specific incident
yeah, there's a
or
very specific catalyst. My son. So he at age 2 started to lose his developmental milestones, and I realized that is bizarre. That is I'd never heard anything like it. If this was
Wow.
normal, Kathy, there would be
Mhm,
fairy
mhm,
tales about it. It would be in religious scriptures. It would be in the science literature. And
mhm,
none of that was the case. Here I'm watching my young 2-year-old lose language, lose the ability to sleep, lose the ability to eat properly. I'm watching him lose all of his developmental early milestones, and I'm horrified. And so and I came from a very orthodox medical background. Both my parents were physicians. 2 of my uncles were physicians. I grew up as a child in this very medicalized environment, and so I didn't suspect that, there was possibly anything wrong per se in that. But,
mhm,
I became aware pretty early on that, pretty early on, not super early on, but I was just like, "There's a cause for this. This isn't normal. Like, this didn't
mm,
just happen. This isn't just like, oh, some kids develop autism." I mean, that was obvious to me, just as a maternal kinda instinct is like, something happened. I don't know what it was, but obviously there was a trigger, and if there was an environmental trigger, there's a de-triggering mechanism. So I
mhm,
believe that I can change this, and I'm gonna find out what the trigger was. And in his
mhm,
case, it was pretty clear. He was not one of these kids who got a shot and had seizures that night or 105 fever, but he got a battery of shots. And once I understood at the time, Kathy, it was kind of like the mercury hypothesis, the
mhm,
thimerosal causing mercury poisoning. Then I sort of pasted it together and I realized, oh, that's exactly what happened to him, right? He got all of these mercury containing shots, dysregulated his immune system. He was having some developmental issues, but not really super strong. And then we walloped him with measles, mumps, rubella, 3 live viruses. And he,
mhm,
just, was really, really severely harmed. And,
mhm,
thankfully, recognizing that there were environmental harms, did allow me to pursue biomedical interventions. He, really improved drastically. But, he's not the same person that he would have been without the brain injury. He was
Yeah.
severely brain injured. And it's unconscionable that we're still doing this, Kathy. It's
Yeah.
unconscionable this is happening.
25 years later, still
It's
happening.
unconscionable. And
Yeah.
I just I couldn't not do anything, Kathy, I just couldn't. It's like, I've
No.
gotta tell other people, and it's a hard message, it's not a message that the world wanted to hear, especially
Mm,
25 years ago, and so
mhm.
I haven't always been the loudest or the most harsh voice, but I have been a part of the medical community, the scientific community, with your husband, with others saying, "This isn't right. We're harming children. We're doing more harm than good." And I
Mm.
do feel like over the last 25 years, Kathy, there's now like a body of science, there's anecdotal evidence. And, I have to say that COVID was the silver lining because during
Yeah, it
COVID,
was.
it was obvious to the whole world. They're lying to us. They're lying
Mhm.
through their teeth. This doesn't stop infection. It doesn't stop transmission. They want us to take 10 doses. In Europe, they bought 10 doses per person. I think the
I just wanna
what's the
smack
word
my
I want?
head.
The exploitative at best, the kind of evil agenda at worst just became pretty clear to people.
Yeah. Well, I recall, so Jim and I, it would have been about 10 years really. We stepped into the world of exposing the medical fraud and pharmaceuticals shortly after Vaxxed came out. That's really what gave Jim his public voice and really started, snowballing this, we got to tell people, we got to get out the message and everything. But I remember a few years prior to COVID, we were all saying, it's going to take an adult vaccine to really wake up the world.
Yep.
And, that's exactly what we got. We got the COVID vaccine, which really showed everybody how the sausage was made. And really, you're right. It was a silver lining. It was that blessing in disguise. And it also brought so many communities together that were already, pulling against the government or, whatever it was. But I want to go back to when your son started having these adverse events, just did you approach the pediatrician and you like, I think it was the shots? I mean, how did that conversation go?
I didn't
Mhm.
perceive that it was the shots right away, Kathy. His
Mhm.
regression was sort of slow, and it was genuinely this is, 25 years ago, it was sort
Yeah.
of mysterious, and I this was really kind of pretty early on even with the internet, so I'm, like, looking on the internet, I'm reading resources about autism, and the vaccine hypothesis wasn't really widely available, but I learned through reading the book called Unraveling the Mystery of Autism by Karen Cerusi, I learned about the Defeat Autism Now conference. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh, this
Yeah.
sounds what I need. This is like the scientists, the doctors, the parents. That's where I need to go. And so I
Mhm.
went to that in 2021 to San Diego. It was right before 9/11, and I heard Elizabeth Burt, I heard Rick Rollins, I heard Andy Wakefield. I heard sort of leaders in identifying things, but I heard, I think it was Elizabeth Burt who gave the presentation. Lynn Redwood was there. The presentation, Thimerus, autism is a unique form of mercury poisoning. And
Okay.
I read that paper and I was like, that's it. That's
That
what
was
happened.
it.
Gave him
Yeah.
all shots that had thimerosal. We'd actually saved the package insert, so I went back, I was like, "Oh, yeah," and he could have been getting the bottom of the vial, he could have been
Yeah.
particularly sensitive,
Mhm. Yeah.
but it was obvious to me, "Oh my gosh," and so then through Dan, which doesn't exist anymore, Defeat
Mhm.
Autism Now, I found local doctors who had been trained in this, and we started chelation therapy. No, I take that back. We started an antifungal nystatin over-the-counter treatment. It was like a pill, and the
Mhm.
kid starts having 10 words a day. And I was like, "Okay, this was environmental." The fact that
Mhm.
plausible
Yeah.
theory, the facts fit the theory, and then I can start to reverse this right away. I was like but even so, Kathy, again, I was
Mhm.
indoctrinated just like everybody. Even so, I was very skeptical to say my kid's autism is due to vaccines. I didn't say that.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I thought, okay, well, as a lawyer, maybe one of the contributions I could make, by then I was connected to Autism One, I will listen to all of the testimony in the omnibus autism proceeding. So literally,
Mhm.
I listened every day to the first 3 cases under the vaccine injury compensation program. And that was what really got me off the couch. That was when
Oh,
it
yeah,
was so clear to me, the government's lying. They're just
yeah.
lying. And then when we would listen to the doctors who would explain the theories of like, it's very well understood that different metals, copper, mercury can cause inflammation, it can cause brain
Mhm.
damage. And you
Mhm.
listen to, high fevers can cause brain inflammation. And it was so clear. That was really what, it's the beauty of a trial, and it wasn't even really a real trial, but I got to listen to both sides, which of course the pro-vaccine people have deprived us of for 25 years of real
Mhm.
debate, vigorous debate in front of the public, or
Well,
courtrooms.
they don't wanna debate.
No, they don't, but I
Yeah.
actually got to listen. I'm glad you're reminding me this. I got to listen very early on to the government's position, HHS, actually, Health and Human Services, represented by Department of Justice, versus a petitioner steering committee of lawyers from the vaccine injury compensation program. And I got to listen to the scientists lined up on both sides. And I was like, the government's lawyers are the government's experts are lying. And that was what really gave me the
Wow.
to say, yeah, they're just lying, and
Mhm.
to be very, loud and proud, and let people know. And so that led me on a journey to find other parents. Of course, my first obligation was to help recover my son, but
Yes.
secondarily, my objective was I want to let people know that this is really dangerous. Like, they're
Mhm.
not telling us the full story. And I respect civil rights. I believe in human rights, Kathy. So if somebody
Mhm.
wants to take a vaccine, I'm not going to want to stop that person. But the reality is
Right.
nobody people aren't getting truthful information. That's the bottom
Mm.
line. There's deception,
Mhm.
there's censorship, there's propaganda. And in that context, nobody can make an informed choice. And so my
Mhm.
objective has been to help people get truthful information and to ensure that we have a
Mhm.
choice. A lot of what's also happened with these medical mandates and with COVID and,
Mhm.
with the denials of religious exemptions to deny people of choice. Well, that's unethical. We believe in modern medicine and informed consent, but they've basically been trying to whittle that away in any kind of, infectious disease context. So, anyway, that's a little bit of the story.
Yeah, no, that's well, and that just leads right into informed consent, which is, you know, if everybody just understood informed consent, you inform the person of the risks and the benefits and the alternatives, and they consent, yes or no.
Or
And
no.
yeah, and that's it. That's all
And
that it should be.
Exactly. There should be no medical
Mhm.
mandates. We admire,
Mm-mm.
what's
Mm-mm.
been done in Idaho. There should be no medical mandates. They are antithetical to informed consent. And really, it should be, Kathy, informed consent or refusal, right? People
Mhm.
have the right to refuse. You get to consent or you get to refuse. And in both cases, it's got to be based on accurate, adequate information. And we don't have the adequate, accurate information, and these
Mhm.
mandates are coercive. And, I do go back to the Nuremberg Code. The consent of the individual is absolutely essential. That was just about experimental subjects, but that was 1947. That's been expanded over the decades. That should be every medical intervention. And so the law
Mhm.
hasn't quite caught up. Certainly the World Health Organization hasn't caught up. Certainly not the World Economic Forum. Sadly, not Congress. But the bottom line is if you have a medical model that says informed consent is absolutely essential, which we do, there
Mhm.
can be no medical mandates, full stop.
Yeah, absolutely, which is thankful that the the route to defeat a lot of this is now turning to legal
Yep,
precedents, and,
yep,
we can, yeah, let's talk about some legal stuff.
sure.
That's your profession right there. So, we have Kennedy and HHS. I mean, who ever thought that would happen? I mean,
Certainly, I didn't, Kathy. It was kind of a shocker, but a really welcome shocker, right? None of the people who were working for Bobby when he was running for president, none
yeah.
of us thought that,
I
okay, well,
mean,
you know,
talk about the stars aligning and God giving favor and all. I mean, it's I ugh. Jimmy's dancing in heaven. I do know that. I know that everything that's happened. So, but the interesting thing to me is okay. So he comes. So what happens? We remove Hep B, we like revise the ACIP committee, we reduced the number of vaccines on the CD schedule. We're all cheering. We're like, yes, yes, yes. We've got Dr. Stoller and Paul Thomas with their RICO lawsuit against the CDC. All of these great things, great things. And then all of a sudden, we pissed off the American Academy of Pediatrics a little bit.
just a little.
Just a little bit. Oh my gosh. I cannot stand that organization, and if anybody knows anybody that's on the or an American Academy of pediatrician, you're very closed mind. You need to become a critical thinker and figure out what's really going on above your paycheck. So that's my old thing there. Okay, so the AAP gets a little mad, and so then now tell me, they decided to sue HHS, right? And Bobby Kennedy. And so where do we stand now? Because
Right.
so does that mean Hep B's back on? All the I mean, what happened next?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
let me explain what's happened. So
Mhm.
Um, we did, I guess what's first? I guess it is first. Last summer, the American Academy of Pediatrics sued Robert Kennedy as the Secretary of Health and Human Services and alleged that
Mhm.
essentially everything he was doing when it came to vaccine policy was wrong and that he didn't have the authority to do it. And they kept amending their complaint. And so everything he did, the Hep B, the COVID recommendation, the convening of a new ACIP committee, the meetings that were going to come up of the ACIP committee, the changing of the schedule to reduce sort of what was routine and then create some that were shared clinical decision making.
Mhm.
Every time Kennedy would make a change, the AAP would amend their complaint. And so about, I guess, a month ago, they and AAP, which we believe is a front organization for the pharmaceutical industry, and it's
Oh, yeah,
with other organizations in the
absolutely. Yes. Mhm.
pharmaceutical pantheon,
Uh-huh.
they chose a judge, in Boston, federal, First Circuit Court of Appeals, but a federal district court judge, Judge Murphy. Judge Murphy had only been on the bench for a year and a half. Judge Murphy's already been overturned twice by the Supreme Court on immigration-related decisions. Anyway, they found Judge Murphy, and, candidly, the lawyers for HHS, did not make, in our view, the best arguments they could have made, but,
Mhm.
the AA and we sought as Children's Health Defense, because AAP is representing the pediatricians, HHS is representing the government. We think somebody should be representing the children in this. These are the people
Yes.
really involved. So we tried to intervene in that lawsuit. The court said, "No, we won't let you intervene, but bring us a friend of the court brief," which we did. So we're in
Mhm.
that. We've already appealed the decision. So the court ruled against Bobby in favor of AAP, and they
Okay.
granted a preliminary injunction, which is based on the idea that serves the public interest and the party that gets the injunction is most likely to win at trial when all the evidence is shown. We don't agree with
Mhm.
that, but that was what this judge, who's had his problems in his short year and a half, has found. And so what did that do? It
Mhm.
basically said that Kennedy, under the Federal Advisory Committee Act and the Administrative Procedure Act, did not have the authority that he exercised, and that he had not created a qualified ACIP panel, and that he, without ACIP's blessing, well, because he hadn't had the committee was not formulated the way it should have been in his view, this judge's view,
Mhm.
nothing that Kennedy has done is sort of legitimate. So I consider the judge's ruling almost nonsensical, Kathy, because it's a catch-22. It's like everything that you've decided doesn't work, but because the committee isn't legitimate, but you need the judge's approval to do anything. So literally, if there were an Ebola outbreak tomorrow and the world wanted an Ebola vaccine to be made available to the public, that wouldn't really be possible without
It's
the secretary going to the judge, which
yeah.
is ridiculous, right? Absolutely ridiculous. Basically, this judge has completely frozen all
Mm,
activity related to infectious disease at the Centers
mhm,
for Disease Control. So, we, Children's Health Defense, have already appealed that judge's decision saying that was a wrong decision and we should be
mhm.
able to intervene, and you decided that wrongly. And Kennedy, on behalf of HHS, has filed a notice of appeal that they will be appealing the decision. Now, back in January, Children's Health Defense filed a lawsuit against the American Academy of Pediatrics for racketeering. We believe that the
Yes.
AAP has knowingly, intentionally been lying to pediatricians and to the American public, to parents of young children, for decades, saying that the whole childhood schedule has been proven to be
Mm,
safe and effective. That is a lie. The Institute of Med
absolute lie.
is the highest authority in medicine in the country, has twice in 2002 and 2013 opined that the schedule has not been adequately tested, and that to
Mm,
really test the safety of the schedule, you would have to retrospectively do a vaxxed unvaxxed study.
Mm,
AAP has never done that.
mm.
AAP has relied on nonsensical arguments by Dr. Paul Offit, and others, that it's
our friend.
theoretically possible to give 10,000 vaccines to a baby at once because their immune
Mhm.
system is so robust. Two of the plaintiffs in that you mentioned, Ken Stoller and Paul Thomas, are plaintiffs in our loss, the racketeering case. That so what is racketeering? It's that they work in a conspiracy with other entities, and
Mhm.
they perpetrate fraud and they make money on the fraud, and they use federal wires and mails to achieve their fraud. So they put out stuff on the internet, they send mailers to their pediatricians, they send notices to parents. So we believe that this is a fraudulent
Yeah,
conspiracy
it's
scheme
intentional.
to make
Mm,
money. Of course, it's intentional. So
mhm,
two of the plaintiffs are Paul Thomas and Ken Stoller. They lost their licenses as pediatricians, saying, "Yeah, what we're doing is harming children." So Paul Thomas did research. Ken Stoller was granting legitimate medical exemptions. But the most powerful plaintiffs, Kathy, are two moms whose babies died by
yeah,
following the AAP schedule. So the first mom, Shaw, she had twins, and she told the physicians, my husband was has had adverse reactions to the flu vaccines. I don't think my kids should get all their shots at 18 months. And they were given the shots anyway. They went back to the hospital. The hospital said, well, maybe they're having an adverse vaccine reaction, but they'll be fine. And the
mhm,
kids died. And then, uh, adding insult to injury, the mother was investigated for murder, because the
mm,
narrative is so strong in the American public that vaccines are safe and effective, vaccines save life. The other mother, Shantisha Nelson, a mother of several children. She had a baby about 12 months, took the baby in for a checkup, a well baby visit. They said, oh my gosh, she's behind. You didn't get the 6 month shots. And the mom says, she's got a sniffle. She's got a low grade fever. She's really not well. No, no, no. It's fine to vaccinate a baby who's mildly ill. So they give the
not.
baby, I forget how many shots all at once, and the baby starts having a seizure in the car. They take the baby to the hospital. They were driving, the whole family, and the baby dies of a cardiac arrest in the hospital.
Mm,
There's just zero question that these toddlers and baby died from following AAP's
mhm,
advice, and this is
mhm.
criminal, frankly, Kathy, that
Yeah,
there's
it
advice for
is
and that is
criminal.
killing children.
Mm,
So we feel very strongly that we've gotta get the truth out. We've gotta get more people to
mm,
understand, who the AAP is. Literally, Kathy, they've never met a vaccine they don't like. This is how pediatric practices basically make their money. They have well baby visits, at birth, 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 12 months, and then, on an annual basis. And there's literally about almost 100 vaccines from birth to 100 if you were to follow the old AAP CDC schedule. What
Mhm.
Kennedy did was to leave, out of to leave most of them, the majority of them, 2/3 of them as still as routinely recommended, but some of them, the flu shot, the COVID shot, the hepatitis A shot, he moved those to be kind of voluntary. You figure it out with your doctor. Does your kid really need this or not? And
Uh-huh.
so, of course, that over time could eat into the revenue stream for pediatricians. And I think most pediatricians are very well-meaning and they believe they're doing right by children. But I don't believe that's the case of the AAP, Kathy. The AAP is
Mhm.
really working with pharma to ensure that as many vaccines are given. And the sad,
Mhm.
awful truth is that they don't just make their money from giving the shots. What the shots really do is they dysregulate the immune system, and that
Uh-huh.
is a huge driver of the chronic disease epidemic that we see,
Right.
which is, contribute allergies, asthma, eczema, autism, ADHD, type 2 diabetes or type 1 diabetes. I mean, it's really the, type 1 does anaphylaxis, tics,
Mhm.
seizures, learning disabilities,
Mhm.
anxiety, bipolar. All of these things are definitely plausibly related to vaccines. And so we believe that we're living through a massive epidemic of vaccine injury. And that
Mhm.
now really the studies are available to show that. Not only the studies that have been done by Neil Miller and Brian Hooker, who works at Children's Health Defense, and Tony Mawson. But this recent big study that Del Bigtree has publicized that was done at the Henry Ford Center, Dr.
Yes.
Zervos, that's a big
Oh, Dr.
sort of,
Zervos,
I
he
know,
needs to come
shaming you.
forward and save the children and not be worried about his ego,
So
and it's not too late.
it's
Come
not
over to our
well, that's
side.
what it's
Yeah,
Kathy, I
it's not
just
too
I just
late.
wrote an article of that. It's never too late. It's never too
Mhm.
late to stop the propaganda and tell the
Mhm.
truth. And I
Right.
I exhort people the same thing. It's like, look, I understand that it may feel sad and difficult, but just look at reality.
Please.
Like,
Yeah.
wake up and
You'll
tell
be
the
able
truth.
to sleep better. I mean, it's like it's such a I mean, well, and for viewers who have not yet seen what Mary is talking about, it's called
You
An Inconvenient Study documentary, and you talked about it's a retrospective study. So what they did is they take historical data. So they compare vaccinated to unvaccinated. And the truth is there is so much data out there that these studies can be replicated. And but the problem is, it's not a problem for us, but it's a problem for the AAP and pharmaceutical companies. They're going to show that the unvaccinated are healthier than the vaccinated. And it's just going to continue with that. And so the data's out there. The
The
data's
data
out
is
there.
out there, and that this film, An Inconvenient Study that Informed Consent Action Network did is an excellent film, and it
Mhm.
shows you, unfortunately, Dr. Zervos at the end saying, "Yeah, the study shows that unvaccinated kids are healthier. They're about 4 times less likely to have a chronic health condition of any kind than the vaccinated kids, but we're not gonna try to publish this study because I would lose my job." And fortunately, this study was brought to the attention of Senator Ron Johnson, who said, "This is not about Dr. Zervos. This is about America's children. This is about the American public." And he
Yeah.
made the study available. And of course, Kathy, it's not the only or definitive study. It needs to be replicated. We need to peer review this stuff. But all of the studies that have been done, and we say there's 12 different studies of comparing vaccinated and unvaccinated outcomes, health outcomes. They
Mhm.
all show that unvaccinated people are healthier. And I think it's kind of obvious. It's like
It
vaccines
is.
manipulating the immune system. And we humans are just not, divine, right? We have divinely created immune systems and we think that we can monkey around and create antibodies and somehow that's going to be an improvement. I mean,
And fix it. Yeah.
crazy.
It doesn't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it starts from this premise of like, we need to fix something. We need a man-made fix to, an incomparably extraordinary divine body. It's kind of when you stop and step back, the whole idea that injecting poisons and illnesses into the body to manipulate the immune system is going to be an improvement.
Yeah, I
Really,
mean, what could go wrong, Mary?
what could go wrong? Yeah. I mean, it's kind of an idiotic idea, frankly. I mean, not to
It
say that
it is.
mass vaccination
It
with a
is.
measles vaccine suppresses measles. It does. In most people, it will work. At what cost, we don't really fully appreciate, but it doesn't
Mhm.
even work in everybody, Kathy. There are
Yeah.
measles breaks every day and 100% because they don't always work when it gives to you or they wear off, right? They
Yes.
don't work well enough to justify the costs in any
Mm-mm.
way, the cost of
No.
administering them, the cost of monitoring, but most importantly, the cost of the injuries and the deaths, right?
And
The
the
vaccine
deaths.
can
Yes.
cause deaths in babies. What could be
Yeah.
more outrageous? Illness is
Right.
a terrible thing, but most illnesses, including measles, are highly treatable, right? So wouldn't we be
Yes.
better
Yes.
off to treat the cases that really
Mhm.
need treatment, but just to let people get sick every once in a while? You train the immune system how to
Mhm.
respond to an infection. So
Mhm.
we lost the plot on mass vaccination back in the '60s, and it's gonna
Mhm.
stop. It's already stopping.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
it
it's
is.
a process, it's a
It is.
process.
Well, we have our Jim and I had 5 kids, and we were following the vaccination schedule with all of them. We finally stopped when HPV came around, but, our kids, pneumonia, asthma, kids on my kids were on nebulizers, I mean, like, every day. Macy didn't speak until after she was 3 years old, and the pediatrician said that was normal. And
Normal.
just all, gut issues. Tori would bleed from scratching or eczema. And then now we have like 7 grandchildren that are unvaccinated, and, if they get sick, it's like a couple of days and then they're all
And
better.
rest right.
Yeah,
And
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 rest the
that's so wonderful, Kathy. I'm so happy
Mhm.
to hear that
Yeah,
you have those
yeah,
beautiful unvaccinated grandkids. Yeah, kids are meant to be healthy, and
they
one of the
are.
things what that I find I just, did an interview with some unvaccinated children and their parents, and I really believe that a lot of the anxiety and the agitation, the bipolar, the what is it? The oppositional defiance. I really believe
Mhm,
that, we have a neuroimmune system. I really believe we're harming our sort of inner sense of harmony with these
mhm.
vaccines, let alone the
Oh,
physical manifestations. But I believe that the mental manifestations are really a huge issue, especially for the kids, because we
yeah,
know kids are really suffering. The suicidality among children is just it's unbelievable. It's horrible.
yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting, and actually, I'm gonna plug I did a podcast, a 3-part podcast on, in utero and infant reflexes with a chiropractor, Dr. Laura Hansen, and she talks about, the adverse events and injuries, and if they're not, achieving these reflexes, how it
Yeah,
affects the
sure.
mental anxiety and all of those, and it's all tied in there, and, I'm gonna jump back because we were talking about, the parents that are in the lawsuit, and that the mother of the twins was actually accused of, killing her
Yeah.
children. Do you believe that parents have been wrongfully
Convicted.
accused and
Yeah,
convicted
I do.
for
I
child
do.
abuse?
I do.
Is there
Um, y
anybody that helps them? Because I
yeah,
hear of those things, and
yeah,
it just like
it's
I'm
horrifying.
just like, it's
It's horrifying.
horrifying. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
horrifying. There used to be a physician, I can't call his name, but these shaken baby syndrome cases. So actually, it was
Mhm,
interesting. I had a conversation with pediatrician Paul Thomas. And he
mhm,
was telling me back in the day, he, was taken in by this rhetoric that there's such a thing as shaken baby syndrome. N
mhm.
no, if a baby's
Yeah.
brain, is super inflamed, I think so often, that's the case. I'm not saying
Mm,
there's no conceivable mistreatment of children that we shouldn't investigate, of course we should, but every case of sudden infant death syndrome, which is a complete misnomer for mostly vaccine by death by vaccine,
yeah.
or for shaken baby syndrome. Both of those, in my view, are largely euphemisms for injury and death from vaccines in infants. And we
Mhm.
really need to look back at this. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
we do. I don't know how many convictions there've been across the country, but
Mhm.
I know that there have been some, and there were some efforts to free people from this, but these are very serious issues.
Yeah. Yeah, they really are. Well, I remember, that was one of the things that really Jim was like during his residency as an ophthalmologist, which is an eye surgeon. While he was a resident, he'd get called over to the children's hospital when there was suspected cases of shaken baby syndrome, and he would have to check, the retina to look for bleeding, any type of retinal hemorrhaging, and it was a checkbox for shaken baby syndrome, but he was like the parents were adamant they didn't hurt the child. There's no bruises, there's no broken bones, and it was just like but that was one of those things he was like, "It just doesn't add up." And then I guess he had a couple of studies when he was an editor for the Ocular Journal
Right.
showing, uh, vascular hemorrhaging, with related to vaccinations. So, but it's those things. And I just always wonder when I hear like on the news that, this father has been accused
Mm.
of murdering this 6-month-old child, which by the
Yep.
way, that's usually after the 6-month
Right.
routine visit. And that they go to prison. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, did anybody check the vaccination record of the baby? And
Yeah, I mean, there's
yeah,
any infant death, Kathy, should be evaluated for when the baby had
yeah,
her vaccinations.
yeah.
Any baby's death, and the U.S. has the highest infant mortality rate in the
Hmm.
developed world.
Yes.
Obviously, and we have the highest rate of early vaccination. We are
Hmm.
out of step with Western Europe and Japan. We do
Hmm.
have more, and we have more autism, we have more SIDS, we have more all of these things. So, what Kennedy's tried to do, he did not take away in his policies that are frozen for the moment. There was not a single vaccine that was unavailable that had been available. There was not a
Hmm.
single vaccine that had been uninsured by the Vaccines for Children program. I mean, really what AAP did in this lawsuit is do something preemptively. They're afraid of what may happen down the line, but the
Yes. Yeah.
reality, there's not a single
Mhm.
vaccine that you couldn't get, and there was no change in the insurance coverage.
Mhm.
So, they were just really trying to thwart him. And, pharma
And
is
buy some time. They're trying to buy some
by some
time
time,
to figure out
right?
how they
People
can
hoping, yeah, exactly.
overcome this. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, they're not gonna overcome it.
no, they're not. They're not.
No.
I think that ultimately, what we'll see, Kathy, much like when tobacco finally, pharma
Mm.
uses the tobacco playbook. It's like, doubt is their
Yes.
subject. Oh, your baby could die from measles. Get your MMR, right?
Mhm.
Oh, you're going to die if you don't take the vaccines. It's the same. It's one of the playbooks. And then, oh yeah, those people are nuts. Their science is really
They're
flimsy.
anti-vaxxers.
We're anti-vaxxers, right, you're right, all of that stuff. But like tobacco, ultimately, there will be a big legal settlement, just like in tobacco. We're not quite there
Mhm.
yet, but we're on the way. There will be a big settlement. And ultimately, like what happened with tobacco, they had to move into other industries. Now, sadly,
Mm.
they moved into food, and they made our food addictive, and they made our food ultra processed. But what we're gonna see is a morphing, I think, of
Yeah.
pharma, because already I don't know if you picked up on this, but this is fabulous. So Pfizer was apparently trying to pull together a new clinical trial, I guess, for the COVID shot, an mRNA COVID
I
shot. They
heard.
couldn't recruit enough people for the clinical trial. So that's
Ye
that's where there is freedom of choice, right? There's a market
Mhm.
there, and nobody would go
Yeah.
sign up for a clinical trial. Even people who, presumably needed money badly. Nobody went to go sign up for that clinical trial. Nobody trusts these people anymore, as they should
Yeah.
not. And so it's not all manifest yet, but the processes are absolutely in motion. The processes are in motion.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I mean, what started out as little ripples is turning into this
Yeah.
great big tide, and it's just gonna keep going, and it's gonna be great. So, and I don't I wanna just quickly make sure that people see this book, HPV Vaccine on Trial, because sadly, it's still on the market,
You
the
know?
HPV vaccine, which at one time was the deadliest vaccine, right? Until the COVID vaccine came along.
Mm.
They talk about corruption
Yeah.
on how they designed their clinical studies and how they pushed this out and how many women they damaged and the fertility decline. If you don't know about the HPV vaccine, that's just another great resource, Mary. That why'd you pick the HPV vaccine?
My co-authors, Kim Mack Rosenberg and Eileen and Iorio and I, we all had children who suffered vaccine injury that looked like autism, but we were
Mhm.
learning about and reading about the injuries from the HPV vaccine. And these were, teenagers who were dying or teenagers who
Yeah.
were becoming paralyzed or suffering severe brain damage.
Mhm.
And we're horrified. And we
Just
thought,
debilitating.
A horribi we were horrified, and they were pushing this first on all girls, right? As starting at, like, age 9 to 13, protect
Mm.
yourself against cervical cancer, and then having sold it for cervical cancer, then they turn around and they sell it to boys who don't have cervixes. "Oh, you're gonna protect your partners, and it's gonna protect you against herpes," and, it's just a good thing to do. Vaccination.
Oh.
And so, they started really pushing it across the country on all girls and boys. Fortunately, it was never mandated in a state where there wasn't a religious exemption. That has never yet happened because there's been a lot of pushback from parents of like, are you telling me you want my kid to be promiscuous and they're going to start having, sex at like 9 or 13? So
Mhm.
fortunately, there's been a lot of pushback to the vaccine, but it's been pushed aggressively around the world, especially in developing countries. It
Mm.
absolutely does have impacts on fertility, but it causes death. It causes cervical cancer in some people. The
Mhm.
clinical trials were abhorrent.
Mhm.
Um, they didn't adequately characterize it. They never used a true control either for Gardasil or for Gardasil 9. For the big part of the clinical trial, they gave the girls in the alleged control aluminum to make the injuries, sort of, like, even out in the
Or something,
group.
yeah.
Even with all of the doctoring of the data they did, the original clinical trial data shows that if a woman does go in and has a cervical infection or has antibodies, human papilloma antibodies that are in the vaccine, she's at increased risk of cervical cancer or cervical abnormal growth, and they don't test women before they give this shot.
Mm.
So, we interviewed, teenagers who die. We interviewed the
The
parents of children
parents,
who
yeah.
died. We interviewed, um, the parents of children who committed suicide because they couldn't live with sort of the pain
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
that happened to them. And it's still on the market, it's still being pushed.
Mm.
The medical establishment is still saying it's, completely safe and effective, and it's the best way to prevent cervical cancer. Cervical cancer is a very low risk. Pap screening, which has been done for
Yes.
50
Yeah.
years, is highly effective. Just sort of having somebody look at a woman's cervix every 3 years or so. So it's another exploitative medical product that the medical industry and the pharmaceutical industry and governments have picked up and they have pushed. And it won't last forever, Kathy, but it's
Right.
still
It's still
going.
there. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
still there. Well, the other thing, Facebook and Instagram and and alternative media and all of these things, well, while it has some negative things, the good thing is that people are able to now
Right.
kind of find some other perspectives on things and
Yes.
actually dig a little deeper. The censorship part during COVID, I mean, I think that's waned down. Most of us
Yeah.
who lost Twitter and
Yeah.
accounts and everything, we're starting to get those back. But I'm so thankful for all the independent people
Yeah.
and people doing podcasts and
Yeah.
people getting out there and really speaking. And not only that is you get an opportunity to actually explain things to
Yeah.
people and with your credentials and instead of, somebody taking out 3 sentences that you said and turning
Yeah.
those words
It's
against you.
I just completely agree with you. There is still censorship by algorithm. So there is still
Mm,
censorship on X and on
yeah.
Facebook and on Instagram and on Substack. But in all of those places, and you're right, especially in podcasts, so much more information is readily
Mhm,
available than it much more
mhm.
available than it used to be. And one of the things that's really interesting to us, Kathy, is, not only are we now like quoted in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post and Politico and Stat, but they are actually linking to our articles, right? So people who are
Right.
reading the mainstream will say, I wonder if they got that quote right. And they'll look back at the original. So it is shifting, and the word is out, and people are voting with their feet, right? People have left the states that don't have religious exemptions. The rates of vaccination for children are going down. Nobody's taking the COVID shot. So we as a
Mhm.
community, the health freedom world, we have gotten through to people, but there's more work to do because
Yeah.
pharma and the medical establishment are still lying. And everybody wants to believe their doctor. It's like you want to believe your priest, you want to believe your spouse, you want to believe your parents. And so it's really a terrible wrong when the medical establishment is lying to patients. And unfortunately, that's really still the case when it comes to vaccines.
Mhm, yeah. Well, I'm thankful that we have people like Mary Holland on the legal side because I really think a lot of the results are gonna, have to be fought in the courts. And I imagine when you were a little girl, did you like have your stuffed animals out and like do court scenarios?
No, I didn't, but I grew up in a family where, there was vigorous debate at the dining room table, and
Okay.
I've always, loved I've always loved debating ideas, Kathy. I think
Mhm,
like Bobby Kennedy said when, at HHS on the presidential, it's like I'm not ideologically bound to any conclusion. I just think like most normal people, I just want our children to be healthy. If
yeah.
I thought that vaccination was making children healthy, if I thought the evidence showed that
Mhm,
vaccination was making children healthier, I would be the first person to be pro vaccine.
mhm,
That's
mhm,
not what the facts are. That's
mhm,
not what is the truth. And the only reason that vaccinations are safe and effective, vaccine saves lives, still plays in the world that we live in is because of the propaganda and censorship that the pharmaceutical
mhm.
industry and medicine are still doing.
Yeah. Well, I think that people need to just stop taking everything for granted or believing everything that they're
Yeah.
told. And you might think vaccines are safe and effective. Well, take that thinking brain and start doing a little bit more research. And again, we're not saying that vaccines are the the cause of absolutely all
No,
chronic
they're
disease,
not.
but it's a big
It's a big part.
portion of it. It really is. It really is. So, Mary Holland, what do you want people to do?
I want people to come to our website, Kathy,
Mhm.
childrenshealthdefense.org. And I want them, if they're on Twitter, to follow us at Children's HD. Sign up for our free newsletter, The Defender. It is some of the best journalism about health and what's going on for children out there. It really, we have an
Mhm.
amazing team doing great work. Come watch us at CHD TV. We go live streaming 10 a.m. Eastern every day, Monday through Sunday. And we have on amazing scientists, physicians, lawyers, advocates, parents. And we're really trying to raise the bar. We also have chapters at the state level in many states. So come check out Children's Health Defense. If you don't know about us, we would love to have you come join the CHD family, and we will try to lead you towards the truth and to help defend children's health and
Yeah.
advance children's health.
Absolutely. I mean, you are a phenomenal resource and with education, podcasts, and absolutely everything. And Mary, I thank you so much for all that you are doing for our children, for every day that you get up and you carry on that mission. And may you be blessed in every way. And I'm going to see you again. Okay.
You got it.
Have a great day.
Thanks so much,
Thanks.
Kathy.